Money is not where the rich begin. It is where their understanding ends. What separates the wealthy from the wandering masses is not the size of their accounts, but the sophistication of their minds. You see, the poor think in terms of earning. The middle class think in terms of saving. But the truly rich think in terms of systems. Systems of leverage, of control, of flow. They don't chase money. They design structures that attract it. They don't seek opportunity. They engineer inevitability. If you want to think like the rich, you must first abandon the illusion that money is acquired by labor alone. The worker sweats. The rich observe. The worker asks for pay. The rich ask for patterns. The worker spends time. The rich spends strategy. For the wealthy, money is not the reward of work. It is the proof of design. They see the economy not as chaos, but as choreography. Every market fluctuation, every social shift, every panic, and every boom is a move in a dance they've studied long before the crowd even hears the music. The poor man dreams of comfort. The rich man studies control. Comfort is temporary. Control compounds. That's why most people chase the feeling of financial safety, but never achieve it. They confuse the symptom for the source. The symptom is wealth. The source is perception. Once you learn to perceive the world through patterns of cause and effect, you begin to see what others miss. You start noticing how power moves not through loud gestures, but through invisible incentives. The rich do not just use logic, they use psychology. They know people don't move for truth. They move for emotion, for belonging, for fear of missing out. And so, while the poor debate what's fair, the rich design what's desirable. They don't argue about morality, they architect momentum. That is why the wealthy always seem one step ahead. They think in systems of human behavior, not in rules of fairness. To think like the rich is to master detachment. The average person makes decisions from emotion, fear, greed, envy, desperation. The rich study these emotions in others, but eliminate them from themselves. They are cold, not because they lack compassion, but because emotion clouds accuracy. A good investor must be a good observer. A good ruler must be a good listener. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." The rich live by this law. They act before emotion has time to distort reason. But detachment alone is not enough. The rich understand that perception shapes value. Nothing is expensive or cheap in itself. It is the story told about it. They don't sell products. They sell meaning. They don't buy assets. They buy narratives. That's why they own media, institutions, and influence networks. Because whoever controls the narrative controls the market. Whoever controls attention controls direction. The masses see wealth as accumulation. The rich see it as construction. They build not just assets, but ecosystems. Every relationship, every deal, every alliance is a brick in their invisible empire. They don't look for transactions, they look for leverage. The difference is this: a transaction ends, leverage lasts. Leverage is when your presence continues to create value, even in your absence. That's why the rich are calm, while others chase chaos. They know their systems work for them, even while they sleep. And here lies a Machiavellian truth. Those who chase money never keep it, because their desire exposes them. Desire makes you predictable. Predictable people can be controlled. The rich hide their desires behind strategy. They never announce what they want. They act in ways that make others deliver it to them unknowingly. They don't beg for opportunity. They become the environment opportunity depends on. That's not luck. That's architecture. If you want to think like the rich, stop asking, "What can I gain?" and start asking, "What can I control?" Money follows control, like a shadow follows light. The more control you have over yourself, over your time, over the systems you operate in, the more wealth gravitates to you. But control doesn't mean domination. It means predictability. The rich control outcomes by reducing randomness. They diversify not because they fear risk, but because they respect it. Machiavelli would say, "Never rely on fortune. Build the conditions that make fortune irrelevant." The rich understand this deeply. That's why they prepare for collapse, even when the world celebrates growth. They thrive in crises because they see chaos as a discount, an opportunity to buy when others panic, to expand while others retreat. To the poor, crisis means fear. To the rich, crisis means clearance. But none of this is possible without the first and most fundamental rule of rich thinking. Ownership of mind precedes ownership of money. The mind that cannot discipline itself cannot direct wealth. The man who cannot control his habits cannot sustain fortune. The woman who cannot detach from emotion cannot see opportunities through the fog of impulse. Every empire begins in the unseen discipline of thought. The poor discipline their effort. The rich discipline their attention. You want to know how the rich seem to attract what they desire? They don't chase. They align. They position themselves where value naturally flows. If water always runs downhill, the rich simply learn where the valley is and build there. They don't fight gravity, they master it. They understand that systems are built on predictability, and wealth is the byproduct of understanding where predictability begins. So, if you want to enter the world of power, start not by earning more, but by observing differently. Study incentives, study human weakness, study repetition. Learn how the same mistakes disguise themselves in different forms. Wealth is not a mystery, it's a pattern. And those who recognize it early enough stop being players and start being architects. The real secret of the rich is not in what they know, but in what they ignore. They ignore noise. They ignore envy. They ignore the endless opinions of the mediocre who disguise distraction as advice. The rich don't compete where others are watching. They build where no one is paying attention. By the time the crowd discovers it, they've already moved to the next field. That's how the rich think, not in days, but in decades, not in effort, but in angles, not in what's trending, but in what's timeless. Because the goal is not to make money. The goal is to build such control over your time, mind, and structure that money becomes inevitable. It stops being your pursuit and starts being your proof. The average man works for money. The rich make money work for them. But the powerful, they go further. They make people, systems, and governments move for them. They don't just think rich, they think sovereign. And sovereignty begins when you stop asking permission to play a game you were born to rewrite. The poor dream of freedom. The rich build structures that make others dependent on them. The difference is subtle, but it defines the architecture of dominance. You see, most people think power is loud positions, titles, fame, but the rich know that true power is invisible. It operates quietly through systems, contracts, dependencies, and emotions disguised as opportunities. The man who shouts for respect has none. The one who doesn't speak but is feared to displease commands empires. Machiavelli once warned that the appearance of virtue is more useful than virtue itself. The rich have mastered that art. They've learned to display generosity, morality, and leadership as performances, while behind the curtain, every move is calibrated for advantage. This isn't cruelty, it's realism. Because in the game of wealth, purity is weakness, and predictability is death. The rich don't fake kindness. They weaponize it. Every favor is an investment. Every alliance is a potential liability. Every gesture hides intention. To think like the powerful, you must begin with one assumption. Everyone wants something. Attention, status, comfort, validation, access. And the moment you know what that something is, you control them. The rich understand this psychological equation instinctively. They don't need to dominate others with fear. They manipulate the economy of desire. They become the gatekeepers of what others crave. That's why the powerful rarely say no. They simply delay, redirect, or remain silent, because silence breeds imagination, and imagination does the manipulation for you. Control isn't achieved by force. It's maintained through perception. The powerful don't force people to obey. They make obedience feel like a choice. They make submission look like ambition. That's how they rule without appearing to rule. They build systems where everyone thinks they're pursuing personal success, while unknowingly feeding the structure that benefits the architect. This is the highest form of control. Voluntary servitude disguised as freedom. The rich don't compete, they construct frameworks where competition benefits them. Take, for example, corporations. While employees battle for promotions, the owners profit from their rivalry. It's not chaos, it's design. The rich understand that rivalry among the masses is protection for the elite. As long as the crowd fights horizontally, no one looks vertically. That's why they promote ambition publicly, but control mobility privately. They allow progress, but only in directions that reinforce their architecture. Machiavelli would call this strategic benevolence. Give enough to inspire loyalty, never enough to enable independence. The wealthy distribute comfort the way rulers once distributed land, just enough to make subjects grateful, but never enough to make them sovereign. This is how entire systems of economic feudalism survive under the illusion of meritocracy. Everyone believes they're one breakthrough away from freedom, while the truly powerful are several generations deep into insulation. To rule like the powerful, you must master leverage of dependency. Control is never about owning people directly. It's about ensuring that your absence would cost them more than your presence. You don't need them to fear you. You need them to fear losing access to you. That's what the rich perfect. Controlled indispensability. They make themselves too useful to remove and too mysterious to replace. Every mentor, investor, or leader who seems generous in your story has already calculated the return in influence. That's not corruption. That's architecture. The difference between manipulation and mastery lies in awareness. The poor are manipulated unknowingly. The rich manipulate consciously, but responsibly. They understand that to control others, you must first control yourself. Discipline is the first currency of the powerful. Because without self-control, every attempt at domination becomes emotional, reactive, weak. The rich don't explode. They evaporate from the table and let absence become the lesson. They don't argue, they restructure. They don't threaten, they replace. But let's go deeper. Power, at its core, isn't about wealth or influence. It's about control of perception. When you can define what others believe to be true, you no longer need to convince them, you only need to suggest. This is why the rich don't compete for attention. They design platforms that own it. They don't debate narratives. They fund the ones that benefit them. The Machiavellian rich know that the crowd doesn't seek truth. They seek reassurance. And whoever supplies reassurance becomes their ruler. This is why real power is patient. The rich think in time frames longer than anyone else. While the average mind seeks instant gratification, the powerful invest in influence that may not pay off for decades. They know that time is the one resource money can't buy, but it can be rented through loyalty, through dependence, through illusion. Every long-term relationship they maintain has layers of potential leverage. Every short-term interaction is a data point. To them, every human connection is both emotional and economic, two currencies that often exchange without acknowledgement. Machiavelli would whisper, "Never waste suffering, turn every weakness into leverage." The rich live by this. Every failure becomes a lesson they can sell. Every betrayal becomes a map of human nature. Every loss becomes a lesson in endurance. They don't escape pain, they extract wisdom from it. Because pain sharpens awareness, and awareness is the seed of advantage. The poor seek to forget pain. The powerful turn it into prophecy. And here lies another unspoken truth. Power doesn't corrupt, it exposes. Give a man money and authority, and you don't change him, you reveal him. The rich know this, which is why they test loyalty quietly before the stakes are high. They'll lend opportunity, offer trust, extend favor, and then observe who grows arrogant, who becomes entitled, who remains consistent. To the Machiavellian mind, loyalty is not proven in adversity, but in prosperity. Adversity makes allies. Prosperity reveals parasites. The powerful also understand the necessity of myth. Every empire, every dynasty, every fortune rests on a story. People follow belief, not logic. The rich preserve their mystique by blending truth and ambiguity. They reveal enough to inspire, never enough to replicate. That's why those who teach how to be rich rarely are, and those who are rich rarely teach, because teaching the system weakens its scarcity. The Machiavellian keeps his blueprint invisible and his legend alive. In this game, reputation is currency and mystery is armor. The poor seek validation. The rich manufacture perception. They don't announce success. They allow whispers to build it. Because rumor amplifies faster than proof, and myth lasts longer than memory, the wealthy don't need to be understood, they need to be believed in. Belief is the softest form of control ever invented. It builds empires without bloodshed and obedience without force. To think like the rich and rule like the powerful is to understand that control must evolve from external to internal. At first, you learn to control money, then people, then systems. But the final mastery is controlling your own visibility, to appear when it benefits you, to vanish when it protects you, to be omnipresent yet unreachable. The Machiavellian doesn't need to dominate every room. He designs the conditions that make every room serve his interest. That is the quiet science of sovereignty. The poor want influence. The rich want insulation. The powerful want invisibility. And invisibility, my friend, is the highest luxury of all. Before a man rules others, he must rule himself. That's the law the rich never forget. The crowd seeks shortcuts, motivation, and momentum. The wealthy seek mastery, detachment, and precision. Because while most people spend their energy chasing outcomes, the powerful spend theirs refining internal states. They know that chaos outside is only dangerous when it reflects the chaos within. So, their greatest investment is not in assets, but in equilibrium. Every generation produces dreamers who crave fortune, but only a few become architects of it. What separates them? Discipline. Not the shallow, social media discipline of routines and planners, but the deeper kind, the ability to remain still while others panic, to act strategically while others react emotionally, to move without announcing, and to stop without explaining. The discipline to stay invisible until precision guarantees victory. Machiavelli would say, "He who controls his impulses controls his destiny." The rich take this literally. They don't respond to provocation. They calculate the cost of response. They don't chase validation. They observe how validation shapes the herd. Their decisions are made not for applause, but for advantage. Every moment of restraint buys them leverage later. Because in a world obsessed with visibility, invisibility becomes a superpower. The masses confuse motion with progress. The rich measure stillness as strength. You see, energy is finite. The more you react, the less you control. The wealthy conserve energy, the way generals conserve soldiers, never wasted, always positioned. They know that the greatest power isn't in doing more, but in doing less with greater accuracy. A man who moves only when necessary can never be predicted. This restraint extends beyond action. It governs desire. The rich don't want everything. They want leverage points. They focus their hunger on positions that multiply outcomes. That's why they don't rush to buy luxuries. They buy mechanisms that produce luxuries. They understand that every dollar should either buy freedom, control, or silence. Anything else is noise. Money, to them, is not pleasure, it's positioning, and positioning comes from discipline. The poor spend to express themselves, the rich spend to extend themselves. Every investment, every partnership, every move is a thread in a larger tapestry of control. They play the long game, where the goal is not to win battles, but to own the battlefield. But let's go deeper into the Machiavellian mind. Discipline is not coldness, it's calibration. The powerful are not emotionless, they are emotionally literate. They feel deeply but choose when to reveal, when to suppress, when to deploy. Emotion is their weapon, not their weakness. The poor get angry, the rich schedule anger. The poor love impulsively, the rich love strategically. They understand that emotion creates connection, but uncontrolled emotion creates exposure, and exposure is vulnerability disguised as authenticity. To rule, you must master your visibility. Show only what reinforces your power. Reveal your thoughts selectively. Let curiosity build myth. The less people know, the more they imagine. And imagination, when directed properly, becomes influence. The powerful don't persuade directly. They let people persuade themselves. Every word, every silence, every act of generosity is designed to trigger predictable reactions. They understand human psychology the way engineers understand gravity: inevitable, exploitable, and measurable. This is the discipline of dominance, to build habits that make manipulation unnecessary. The rich don't manipulate individuals. They design environments where behavior manipulates itself. They know that humans crave certainty, comfort, and validation. So, they control those elements. They give comfort conditionally, validation strategically, and certainty only when it reinforces dependence. That's not malice, it's architecture. Power, like wealth, is sustained through predictable behavior. You don't need to threaten those whose comfort depends on you. You simply let them taste discomfort. You don't remove privileges, you delay them. You don't command loyalty, you observe it. Machiavelli would say, make them loyal to their own advantage. The rich do exactly that. They make obedience feel profitable. But even that control would collapse without patience. Patience is the invisible backbone of wealth. While the poor demand returns today, the rich design systems that yield forever. They don't gamble, they wait. They don't seek excitement, they seek inevitability. They understand that time, used correctly, is the most potent multiplier in existence. Compounding isn't just a financial principle, it's a psychological one. Compounding habits create mastery. Compounding perception creates power. That's why the rich don't measure progress in weeks. They measure it in transformations. They ask not, how much did I make, but how much did I evolve? Because every level of wealth demands a higher level of composure. The poor think wealth makes life easier. The rich know it only magnifies consequences. With power, every mistake becomes a headline. Every weakness becomes a target. That's why discipline is not optional. It's armor. Let's strip the illusion. To rule like the powerful, you must stop thinking like a consumer. Consumers obey appetite. Creators design appetite. The rich don't chase trends, they create them. They don't follow demand, they manufacture it. They plant ideas in the collective psyche and harvest influence when the market matures. They're not reacting to culture, they're shaping it. Because culture is the modern battlefield of control, and whoever controls culture controls behavior without laws. And yet, behind all of this sophistication lies a simple truth. Wealth without peace is poverty in disguise. The rich know this better than anyone. They've seen those who gained fortunes and lost freedom. So the truly powerful cultivate detachment. They use money but never become owned by it. They can lose everything and still move like nothing happened, because their real asset isn't capital, it's capability. The confidence that they can rebuild from nothing. The power to walk away without fear. Machiavelli admired rulers who could outlast chaos because their power didn't depend on possessions. It depended on presence. And presence is built through discipline, showing up without noise, existing without permission, acting without validation. The powerful don't need to prove they belong. They simply behave as if they do. Their stillness demands respect before their wealth does. So if you wish to ascend, start small, but think infinitely. Master one area of your life with such precision that it becomes unshakable. Then, replicate that discipline across everything. Don't seek freedom through abundance. Seek abundance through control. Because control is not the opposite of freedom. It is its foundation. In the end, the world doesn't belong to the brilliant, the talented, or the lucky. It belongs to those who can remain calm while others crumble. The rich and powerful win, not because they have more, but because they need less. They need fewer approvals, fewer certainties, fewer distractions. And that independence of need, that self-contained power, is what every empire, every fortune, every legend is built upon. This is the discipline of dominance, the invisible ritual that turns wealth from numbers into sovereignty. And once you master it, money ceases to be a prize. It becomes a reflection of your control, a mirror showing how much chaos you can command without losing yourself in it. To think like the rich is to see life not as a series of random events, but as a structure, a design that can be engineered, adjusted, and optimized. The poor live within systems. The powerful build them. They treat existence like an empire under construction. Every belief is a brick, every habit a beam, every relationship a corridor of influence. They don't ask, "What can I get?" They ask, "What can I control?" Because control, once achieved, transforms everything it touches. But control doesn't mean resistance. It means design. The rich don't fight the current, they redirect it. They understand the secret of sovereignty. When you can't change reality, you can rearrange perception. When you can't dominate through force, you dominate through narrative. This is why Machiavelli taught that rulers must appear moral while acting strategically. The world runs not on truth, but on the perception of truth. To rule, you must master optics as much as outcomes. The powerful, therefore, live in layers. There's what they think, what they say, and what others believe they mean. Every layer serves a purpose. Transparency, to them, is a luxury they can't afford, because to be transparent is to be predictable, and to be predictable is to be replaceable. The rich are not dishonest. They are selectively opaque. They understand that mystery isn't deception, it's protection. It keeps the crowd guessing, the rivals reacting, and the followers believing. Machiavelli would whisper, "Appear weak when you are strongest, and strong when you are uncertain." The rich live by that paradox. They play roles. Sometimes the student, sometimes the mentor, sometimes the fool. They wear masks, not to hide, but to survive. Because the world is a stage, and those who refuse to act are doomed to be extras in someone else's script. The powerful don't reject manipulation, they master performance. But beneath that performance lies something deeper: structure. The rich don't live chaotically. They have rituals that turn thought into motion, motion into results, and results into momentum. They plan decades ahead, but live with daily precision. Every morning routine, every meeting, every deal is an extension of their architecture. They don't rely on luck, because luck cannot be replicated. Systems can. And here's a truth most never realize. The rich do not chase opportunity. They create inevitability. They engineer situations where outcomes become predictable. The poor ask, "Will this work?" The rich ask, "How can I make this work for me, regardless of conditions?" This mindset eliminates hesitation, because when you stop waiting for ideal conditions, you begin shaping conditions to your design. To rule like the powerful, you must learn to operate in dualities: compassion and calculation, generosity and discipline, detachment and ambition. These are not contradictions. They are tools. Machiavelli understood that greatness requires contradiction, because pure virtue collapses under the weight of reality. The rich accept the complexity of human nature and use it to their advantage. They don't seek to be good or bad. They seek to be effective. Effectiveness is the final form of intelligence. It's not about knowing the most. It's about using what you know with precision. The rich and powerful rarely speak of morality, because morality is fluid. It bends with context. They prefer to speak of consequence. Every choice is measured not in right or wrong, but in cost and return. This moral detachment doesn't make them cold. It makes them strategic, because when you understand consequence, you stop wasting energy on judgment and start investing it in results. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. Fear, in his philosophy, isn't terror, it's respect, born from consequence. The rich know that being likable brings followers, but being formidable brings permanence. They cultivate both, but rely on neither. They use charisma to open doors and discipline to keep them shut to the unworthy. But the final secret of power is not external, it's existential. The truly powerful don't seek to rule others. They seek to rule the self so completely that the world bends around their certainty. Their confidence is not loud, it's gravitational. You feel it before you understand it. But they don't need to command loyalty. Their energy compels it. This is the ultimate Machiavellian paradox. When you no longer need control, everything begins to orbit you. To reach this level, one must transcend ego. Ego is what traps the ambitious in the lower game's competition, vanity, and comparison. The rich don't compete with others because they already compete with their own potential. They measure themselves not against peers, but against possibilities. That's why envy dies at their level. It's replaced by calculation. Every rival is either an asset or a distraction. Every attack is either information or proof of relevance, nothing more. And when betrayal inevitably comes, and it always comes, the powerful don't retaliate impulsively. They document, wait, and adjust the structure so that betrayal becomes impossible next time. They never fight individuals, they fight systems, because to waste time destroying an enemy is less valuable than making the conditions that created him obsolete. Machiavelli believed the art of rule was maintaining stability through constant adaptation. The rich practice this daily. They reinvent themselves before the world demands it. They pivot before crises become visible. They turn decline into rebranding and failure into reinvestment. To them, change is not an interruption, it's an instrument. They don't resist volatility, they ride it like a tide, because the one who adapts fastest doesn't just survive, he dictates evolution. But here lies the ultimate irony. The higher you rise, the quieter true power becomes. The richest speak the least. The most powerful appear ordinary, because the apex of mastery is invisibility. When your systems, relationships, and influence run so seamlessly that you no longer need to assert them, that's sovereignty. The world moves, but it moves around you. To reach that point, sacrifice is inevitable. You will lose comfort, companionship, and certainty. Because sovereignty demands isolation, not as punishment, but as purification. You will face loneliness, but that loneliness will forge clarity. You'll begin to see how the masses trade freedom for belonging, how they mistake movement for meaning, and how they worship success they don't understand. You will no longer envy them, you will study them. And as you study, you'll realize that wealth and power were never the goals, they were mirrors. They reflected your discipline, your patience, your precision. They tested your ability to remain human while playing God in a world obsessed with idols. The true Machiavellian understands that in the end, power must serve purpose, or it consumes itself. The rich who lack vision become slaves to their empires. The powerful who lack direction become tyrants of their own minds. So, think like the rich, rule like the powerful. But remember, the purpose of control is freedom, not captivity. Build systems, not to cage others, but to protect your clarity. Accumulate wealth, not to dominate, but to detach. Influence others, not to enslave them, but to awaken them, to show them that the only true empire is mastery over oneself. Because when the noise fades, when the gold dulls, and when the applause dies, there remains only one kingdom worth ruling, the kingdom within. And that, Machiavelli would say, is where the truly powerful live forever.